The ferry to Darrow Island was late, churning through fog like a ghost through linen. Rachel Keene stood at the bow, camera bag slung over her shoulder, the briny wind needling her cheeks. Only 6 passengers were aboard, 3 old-timers with sun-creased faces who kept mostly to themselves, and 2 men hauling crates labeled shellfish. Keep cool. The captain didn't speak much either. It was the kind of silence that felt trained. Rachel liked quiet places. She'd made a career out of them, writing, photographing, and recording stories of forgotten towns and vanishing communities. Darrow was supposed to be a hidden gem, off-grid living, aging traditions, and a local legend or two. What she hadn't expected was how unwelcoming it felt from the moment it emerged from the fog. The dock was old but sturdy, barnacles clinging to its undersides. A man waited there with a faded navy peacoat and a trimmed grey beard. He held a handwritten sign, R. Keene. "You must be Clint," she said, offering a smile as she stepped off the ferry. "I am," he replied with a voice like gravel. "Hope the trip wasn't too rough." They shook hands. His palm was dry and warm. The ferry pulled away behind her, groaning as it disappeared into the mist. Clint's truck was older than she was, a dented Ford with rust on the wheel wells and a pine-scented air freshener swinging from the rearview mirror. As they drove up the narrow road winding through dark woods, Clint pointed out landmarks. "Only one general store, that's McBride's. Church still holds service on Sundays. Most folks work the docks or fish, or they don't work at all." He paused. "Darrow's quiet. We like it that way." "I get that," Rachel said, noting how thick the trees were. "It's beautiful." "It is," he agreed. "But beauty's like glass out here. You can look through it, but don't go knocking." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just watched the trees pass. The canopy was heavy, blocking most of the sun. There were no billboards, no signs, not even mile markers. Clint's house sat near the bluff, overlooking the eastern shore. It was plain but well kept, with wood siding and a wraparound porch. Inside smelled like cedar and old leather. A fireplace crackled low in the corner. A portrait of a woman, late 50s, smiling, eyes kind, hung above the mantel. "My wife," Clint said quietly when he caught her looking. "Maggie. Gone 2 winters now." "I'm sorry," Rachel said. "She'd have liked the company," he added, then motioned down the hall. "Your room's there. Sheets are clean. Bathroom's at the end." That evening, after unpacking, Rachel took a walk through town. The houses were old colonial builds, salt-stained and creaky. She passed a church, a closed schoolhouse, and the general store Clint had mentioned. No one waved. A man sweeping his porch paused as she passed, eyes narrowing. She found the town's small cemetery. Most of the graves predated the 1950s. A few had fresh flowers. One had a dead crow laid on top, wings stiff, eyes pecked out. She snapped a photo, hesitated, then deleted it. Something felt wrong about keeping it. Back at Clint's, dinner was haddock stew and cornbread. They ate mostly in silence. As she cleared her bowl, she asked, "There's a collapsed building near the north end of the island. An old fort, I read?" Clint didn't look up. "We don't go near Fort Helm." "Why not?" "Because we don't. Place is dangerous. Not just the structure. Leave it be." Later that night, Rachel sat by her window watching the tide roll in. Fog licked at the cliffs. The moon cast no light. On the porch below, just before midnight, she heard slow, deliberate footsteps. When she peeked down, there was no one, only a small pile of blackened feathers and a line of salt across the threshold. Rachel woke to a strange stillness, the kind that comes not from quiet, but the absence of life. No gulls cried. No floorboards creaked under Clint's boots. The only sound was the faint, rhythmic tapping of branches against the windowpane. The salt line and feathers were gone, swept clean sometime in the night. Clint was already outside gutting fish when she came down. His sleeves were rolled up despite the chill, knife working with methodical precision. "Morning," she said. He nodded. "Sleep okay?" "Mostly. Heard something late. Maybe an animal." Clint didn't look up. "Could have been." She hesitated. "Someone left something on the porch. Feathers, a line of salt. Do people do that here? Is it a custom?" That made him stop. He wiped the blade on his apron and turned to face her fully. "Salt keeps rot away. That's what we say. If someone left it, they were keeping you safe. You should take it as a kindness." From that point, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As she walked through the village, conversations tapered off when she neared. Children avoided eye contact. At McBride's store, the owner refused her credit card and told her, "Best keep your stay short. The island don't forget." She walked north that afternoon, ignoring Clint's earlier warning. The path was half swallowed by undergrowth, but it was there, a trail of trampled pine needles and broken twigs. It led her up a slope where ancient oaks stood like sentries, their trunks blackened by some long-ago fire. At the summit stood what remained of Fort Helm. It was less a fort now and more a skeleton, chunks of stone and rebar, moss growing over the wounds. An old cannon lay overturned. But what drew her was a half-collapsed concrete structure embedded into the hillside, likely a bunker or storage room. Its rusted door was warped shut, but it groaned when she pressed a hand to it. She took out her camera, but the moment she powered it on, the battery died. Fully charged that morning, a strange knocking sound rose from within the bunker. 3 soft taps. Then a pause. Then 2 more. Not echoing, close. Rachel froze, breath fogging. The sound stopped as suddenly as it began. She backed away slowly and left the site without another word. As she descended through the trees, she thought she saw a figure behind her, far back, unmoving, but when she turned again there was nothing. That evening, Clint was waiting on the porch when she returned. His expression unreadable. "You went up there," he said. "I just wanted photos. It's historical. There's history, and there's what's buried for a reason," he said sharply. "You think the ground doesn't remember what we did? You think silence is weakness? It's protection." Rachel crossed her arms. "You can't keep it all shut away." Clint's jaw tensed. "We try." That night, as she lay in bed, the knocking returned, but this time it was under her floorboards. 3 soft thumps. A pause. 2 more. She stared at the ceiling, unmoving. When morning finally came, she found a second salt line, this one on the windowsill, and a small carved wooden talisman shaped like an eye on her pillow. She didn't sleep the next night, or the one after. The days on Darrow were getting shorter, but the nights felt endless. Rachel stopped bothering to charge her camera. The batteries drained mysteriously. Her phone, too, began acting strange. No signal, even in places where she'd had bars just days earlier. Her messages to her editor in Boston never sent. A voicemail she'd recorded for a friend played back garbled, ending with a soft tapping sound. Still, she couldn't leave. The next ferry wasn't for 2 more days, and Clint wasn't keen on rushing her out. He avoided her now, disappearing for hours at a time, sometimes overnight. She thought about Fort Helm constantly. The knocking, the feather offerings. The way the townsfolk flinched when she asked too many questions. It didn't add up. On the fourth day, she packed a flashlight, crowbar, and water bottle, then returned to the bunker. The rusted door resisted, but after 20 minutes of wrenching and straining, the hinges gave with a screech that echoed through the pines like a scream. Inside was pure rot, mouldy air so thick it made her eyes water. The bunker sloped downward, deeper than she'd guessed, carved crudely into the rock. Walls were marked with faded graffiti and wartime slogans. But deeper inside, past the first bend, things changed. It became personal. Photographs nailed to the stone, families in black and white, wide-eyed children, mothers holding hands with men in uniform. On the floor, she found a rusted bayonet, a broken pair of spectacles, a doll, burned black and missing its arms. It was clear people had lived or died in here. The air was still, but too warm, like breath trapped in a sealed jar. She kept going. Her flashlight flickered but held. A side tunnel opened into a room filled with crates and bones. Dozens of human bones, some in rough piles, others arranged in symbols, circles, spirals, crude animals. On the wall, someone had scratched the word forgiven repeatedly, hundreds of times, until the stone was worn smooth. She turned a corner and found an alcove hidden behind an overturned metal cabinet. In it, a satchel wrapped in oilcloth. Inside was a journal. She sat down and flipped through it. The first few pages were dated 1944. Orders came in from Boston Command. Prisoners to be held until extraction. But extraction never came. They grew restless. Captain said we couldn't risk them turning. We made a choice. The first didn't scream. The second wouldn't stop. Rachel's hands trembled. The entries became more frantic, talking about penance and containment rituals and something called the Hollow. One line repeated again and again. Blood keeps the hollow shut. Something moved behind her. She froze. A whisper. Not quite a voice. Not quite wind. Like breath under water. She stood, flashlight sweeping wildly, but nothing was there. Still, the air felt heavier. Rachel turned to leave, and found the tunnel door shut tight. Panic surged. She threw herself at it, shouting, pounding her fists. No answer. She sat, breath ragged, every cell screaming to move, to hide, to vanish. Hours passed. Then, click. The door creaked open. A sliver of dying sunlight spilled in. In the doorway stood Tyler, a pale boy with a Red Sox hoodie, maybe 11 or 12. "Come on," he whispered. She didn't ask how he found her. She just followed. Once outside, he led her downhill without speaking. When they reached the edge of the village, he finally said, "They know you went inside. You need to go tomorrow. They'll let the tide rise if you don't." "What does that mean?" she asked. He didn't answer, just ran back into the trees. That night, her door didn't have salt. Her window didn't have feathers. Only a single word carved into the wood frame. Hollow. Rachel packed before dawn, stuffing only essentials into her canvas bag, the journal, her backup phone, and a single camera lens that hadn't been tampered with. She didn't know who had chained the bunker door or who had released her. Maybe Tyler. Maybe not. Either way, she knew this. She couldn't wait for the ferry. Clint was in the kitchen when she came downstairs, sipping black coffee, his expression unreadable. The morning light made the lines in his face look deeper. "You're leaving," he said flatly. "I have to." He nodded slowly. "You went into the hollow." Rachel stiffened. "It's not a myth. There are bones in there, Clint. Names. A confession. The world should know. Clint raised his hand. Not angrily. Almost tired. "We've buried it a dozen ways," he said. "The state came once. In the 70s. Thought about turning it into a historical site. Then the birds started dying, and a whole fishing trawler went under in calm water. Locals stopped talking. Records got lost. Everyone learned it was best to let the island sleep." "You can't just erase history," Rachel snapped. Clint looked at her for a long time, then said softly, "History doesn't get erased. It grows quiet. Until someone starts digging." She left without another word. Tyler was waiting at the edge of the pines, a battered backpack slung over one shoulder. "There's a dock on the west side," he whispered. "Old man Perry keeps his boat there." She hesitated. "Come with me." He shook his head. "My mom would never forgive me." They didn't speak again. The path to the hidden dock was overgrown, laced with spiderwebs and vines, but Rachel moved fast, fueled by adrenaline and dread. She saw no one, heard no one, yet every snapped twig behind her sounded like a gunshot. Old man Perry, whom she'd never met, was already on the boat, untying its ropes like he'd been waiting. "You're her," he said simply. "Get in." They pushed off just as the sky bruised into morning. Fog crept low over the water, veiling the island like a funeral veil. As the boat moved, Rachel turned back for one last look. The trees were full of people. They stood just inside the tree line, dozens of figures, motionless, watching. Men, women, children, some old, some young, all silent. In the distance, from somewhere deep in the woods, came the faint, echoing sound of knocking. Slow, rhythmic, as if something within the island was stirring once again. Halfway to the mainland, the engine sputtered, then died. "Shit," Perry muttered. He pulled the starter cord again and again. Nothing. The water was eerily still. Then came a low rumble, not thunder, not wind, a deep, wet growl from beneath the surface. Bubbles rose. Then ash. Actual ash, rising from the sea like smoke underwater. It coated the boat, clung to their clothes, filled their mouths with a taste of something burnt and ancient. Rachel clutched the journal tight. Perry didn't speak. He just crossed himself and stared at the water. Then, without warning, the engine roared back to life. They didn't look back again. It went viral for 3 days. Then it disappeared. Her editor claimed the files were corrupted. Her blog crashed under mysterious data loss. Reddit threads about the story were taken down for unverified content. And Tyler, when she tried to call the island to check on him, was never listed as a resident. 6 months later, Darrow Island was removed from Google Maps. The ferry stopped running. Old newspaper links now lead to 404s. But sometimes, when Rachel checks her voicemail late at night, she hears a faint tapping in the background. 3 knocks. A pause. 2 more. And on certain mornings, she finds a line of salt across her windowsill and the smell of smoke in her clothes.